The Ursa Mini Pro 12K, the Canon C300 Mkiii, and the Sony FX9 are all within $1,000 of each other at the very competitive and high value price of 10 to 11K US. Whilst there are similarities between these models, each camera offers features, strengths, and weaknesses the others lack. As an Ursa Mini Pro G2 convert and an X-Scarlett W shooter, I'm wondering which, if any of these cameras we at Hallucinor should consider upgrading to in 2020. If you're new to the channel, welcome. My name's Dean Butler. I'm an Australian filmmaker and video producer, and our focus here is on three things. Number one, film and video production gear talk, tests and reviews. Number two, indie filmmaking. And number three, with upcoming content, also focusing on filmmaking lessons from cinema and TV. If that's of interest to you, please consider subscribing. You can always unsubscribe later, but if you like this content, please like it and share it. It helps us out more than you realize. Okay, let's get into it. I think the first thing to consider when making an A camera purchase is what your must-have features or strengths are. Mine, after much consideration, are good dynamic range, pleasing colors, especially skin tones, internal NDs. I don't mind having a secondary camera, like with no NDs, decent 2-channel onboard audio recording with 2 XLR inputs, and a fast sensor read speed, allowing for 100+ frames per second slow motion without cropping. And along with that, 10-bit 422 or higher internal codec with Super 35 or larger sensor size. After I put together this list, I realized the Ursa G2 ticks all of these boxes. Would I like more quality of life features? Absolutely. But at 6K, not 10 or 11, I'm not complaining. The features or improvements I'd like and would on occasion use include: number one, improved low light performance; number two, autofocus; number three, optional image stabilization; number four, extended NDs to 7 or 8 stops so I can shoot wide open outside in sunlight. When I look at what's on offer from these other cameras though, although they are many ways technically superior to the G2, whether that's the drastic increase in resolution from the Ursa 12K, the full frame sensor of the FX9, or the claimed high dynamic range of the Canon C300 Mkiii, and have features like autofocus that the G2 lacks, I just don't think any of these cameras are gonna make me any better a filmmaker or video producer. I have more room and need for improvement as a filmmaker and video producer than my camera does. I doubt an upgrade to any of these three cameras would make my work noticeably better to any of my clients. Absolutely, I'd love improved low light performance and autofocus. As an option, everyone who's about to say it's a cinema camera, it's not meant to have autofocus, perhaps some kind of in-body image stabilization for quick content shooting and additional stops of ND, so I don't need to worry about packing additional external NDs for wide open broad sunlight shooting. But for everything the Ursa G2 does so well at just $6,000, and the Canon C200 does at $5,500, I simply wouldn't spend an additional $4,000 to $5,000 on autofocus and improved low light shooting. These are features that our Pocket 6K handles reasonably well with its dual native ISO, and the Fuji X-T3 has fairly decent autofocus, though I am testing the 56mm 1.2 right now for the first time, and the focus seems to be darting around a bit, so I've got to experiment with the settings with that a bit, I think, so I apologize if focus is darting around. Point is, for higher budget work, we're lighting the thing and someone's pulling focused in a rehearsed setting. Not to mention the fact that I can hire an FX9 and a C300 Mkiii if a shoot comes up where they are just clearly the better tool for the job. And if the job can't afford the rental, then we probably shouldn't be forking out 10 or 11 grand on a camera for that kind of job. Does that make sense? Especially when a camera like the G2 does what it does at the price point it's at. Not to mention the incoming A7S Mark III. I will say, if I were to make a pick out of this bunch, the C300 Mark III seems, at least to me, to be perhaps the best all-round camera if you are happy to sticking to Super 35. If you want that full frame look but limited to 60 FPS, then the FX9 may be the camera for you, as you can or will be able to record 120 FPS at Super 35, albeit to an external recorder, and that very ND looks incredible too. As for the Ursa 12K, I'm so glad this camera is here. The sensor design allowing for uncropped downscaling in RAW is revolutionary. In many ways, it's multiple cameras in one, and I'm excited to see more from it. I worry that not having a 10-bit 422 internal codec option like ProRes may put off a lot of potential buyers. You know, for freelance quick handoff shoots, that's been really handy for us when shooting for agencies and TV shows that want ProRes files delivered. We actually just rented our G2 to our rental house buddies because they needed another one for an Amazon Prime doco being shot here on G2s. But that need for 4K ProRes is already served well by the G2. The Ursa 12K is a different beast with a different target market. It's not trying to be the all-rounder the FX9 and C300 Mark III are, I don't think, both being very flexible and capable for online content, narrative work, broadcast or documentary productions, complete with image stabilization solutions, optional autofocus, and very good to exceptional low light performance. Ultimately, I'd be a happy owner of any of these cameras. Yes, they all have their strengths and weaknesses, but they all offer incredible value and image quality. As an owner of manual EF Cinemodded Zeiss glass that I love using, and Sigma EF Art zooms, I'd automatically lean towards the C300 Mark III as it requires much less of a total reshuffle of our existing lens stocks. And I think there's a lot of people in a similar position to that. But the best upgrade that I can make in 2020 is to my own skills and abilities as a filmmaker and storyteller. And that just costs consistent effort, reflection, study, and time. You know, the easy stuff. I love when new cameras get announced as much as the next camera nerd, but I don't know that an upgrade every camera generation is a big enough leap to justify the expense for freelance shooters and small video production companies. Different, of course, if you're renting it out. Yes, it's always good to get a new tool that makes your life easier and your work faster, and that can be worth the expense. I just don't know that this is enough to warrant a jump to a new A camera, considering all my needs, not my wants mind you, but all my current needs are really met. I'm kind of thinking maybe every second generation, like there's enough of a leap to make it worth moving up. Although the case can be made for selling your cameras while they still hold good value, and we did that with the Scarlett W. But because the G2 is just $6,000, I just don't feel the pressure to sell early, because it's not a 15 grand camera that I feel the need to sell off while it's still worth a reasonable amount, and I'm using the hell out of it. Currently the G2 with 4.6K RAW at 120 FPS, very decent dynamic range, very pleasing colors, especially skin tones, up to 6 stops of ND, and good onboard audio is giving me everything I need right now, if not everything I want. For now, I think that 10 or 11 grand is better saved for a rainy day or used to invest in lenses and other peripherals that hold both their camera agnostic usefulness and value a little longer. I'm online for half an hour after uploading and going live, and I'd love to hear your opinions in the comments. But we're a super small channel anyway, so I'll reply to you whenever you leave a comment. I'd love to know what camera or cameras you shoot on and why. Do you rent or own, or both? Are you thinking of upgrading? Why? Do you need to, or do you just want to? And what are the most important features to you in a camera, and why? See you next time. Although I won't actually see you next time, you will see a recording of me from the past, and I'll be doing something else. Hopefully that worked. Wow, that autofocus really, look at this. So I'm on the, we just got the, because we just had the 16, not the 18, the 16 to 55 f2.8, which is a wonderful lens for the Fuji, and that's all we've used on it for the last year and a half, because it's really just been an extra, mainly a gimbal camera for us, and occasionally we've used it as a C cam in interviews. But there's some more primes on sale now at DigiDirect, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna talk to Shane. I think we should buy these because I really want the 23 and the 16 and the 30. I just want them all. But this 56 is a 1.2. It's a beast on an APS-C lens. But yeah, you can see, I don't think it would be struggling like this at like f2.8. I haven't actually tested this, but yeah, I've got to experiment with the settings. So I've slowed the autofocus down, because before it was like, hang on, what happens if I do this? I've slowed it down because before it was just, so I've moved the autofocus. Oh, there, you could just saw it then briefly. I've got an Aussie monitor there that I'm staring at. See how that goes. Yeah. I think it's just an f1.2 thing. You see that? I don't like that the way. I mean, look, it's a stills camera. The autofocus for stills, which I've just done with my kids on this lens, freaking awesome. There you go. Look, free extra mini thoughts, impressions of the Fuji 56mm 1.2, which has been out for like years. Value, man. That's what you get here. Value. Crazy. See that? Yeah. I hear some of those new Sony lenses are kind of designed really well for video focus pulling and stuff, which should be cool. You know, it's one of the things I don't like about autofocus is for video is when it's got that. See this, yeah, I've tried to set it to be slow, so at least that, although it's slow, doesn't feel jarring. I don't mind that. I don't mind that so much. It's a bit more real. But yeah, if I could speed it up, maybe I can make it a couple of points faster. Because it's sort of hunting. But if I move slowly, yeah, it's not jarring everywhere. The X-T3 is still awesome, by the way. And if you don't need in-body image stabilization, it's pretty cheap. So I reckon before we get another A cam, we might pick up an X-T4. Just have another camera for YouTube and stuff, so Shane and I don't fight over this one, and it's got a flippy screen, but it has got that little in-body image stabilization for when you're wanting to run and gun and get some sneaky handheld. That's pretty good. All right. Look, now it's just going out of focus for no reason. And yeah, I do wonder, is that just... And it's on center point autofocus on me about here, so I don't know.